I'm 52 now, and I live just outside Chicago, in a quiet area where people stop pretending they're younger than they are. I didn't expect to be divorced at this age, especially not after 20 years of marriage, but life has a way of changing direction without asking permission. My ex-wife's name is Laura. We were married for 2 decades, long enough to build habits, routines, a shared history that felt permanent. We have one son, Daniel, 19 years old, already taller than me, already seeing the world more clearly than I ever did at his age. I run a small logistics business. Nothing flashy, but steady. I worked hard, took risks when I was younger, and by the time Laura and I hit our 40s, money wasn't something we worried about anymore. Bills were paid, vacations were planned, comfort became normal. And comfort, I would later learn, bored her. I met Laura almost 25 years ago in a crowded bar downtown. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. A friend dragged me out after work, said I needed to stop living like a retired man at 30. Laura was laughing loudly at the end of the bar, glass in hand, drawing attention without trying. We talked for hours. She was sharp, energetic, ambitious in a way that felt exciting back then. She liked the fact that I was stable. I liked the fact that she was unpredictable. It felt balanced, necessary. A year later, I proposed to her in the middle of a walk through the city park, right under the trees near the lake. She cried. People clapped. We took pictures with strangers' phones. It felt like the beginning of something unbreakable. For a long time it was. As my business grew, so did our lifestyle. Nice house, good schools, trips she posted photos of. Laura didn't need to work unless she wanted to, and for years she didn't. She filled her days with lunches, yoga classes, shopping, and friends who lived very similar lives. Most of her friends were married to wealthy men, louder men, flashier men, men who bragged, cheated quietly, and spent money like it proved something. I never liked them. I tolerated them. At parties, I often felt like the odd one out. I didn't gamble. I didn't flirt. I didn't drink too much. I watched how they spoke about their husbands and wives when they thought no one was listening, and something about it always made my stomach tighten. Laura laughed it off whenever I mentioned it. "You're too serious," she'd say. "Relax. It's just talk." The first real crack appeared on her 45th birthday. She went out with her friends to celebrate. I stayed home. She said it was girls' night, and I didn't argue. I trusted her. Or maybe I trusted the version of her I still believed existed. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A notification. She was live. Curious, I opened the stream, music, alcohol, shouting. Laura in the center of the screen, laughing too loudly, cheeks flushed. Her friends pushed a cake toward her, cheering. On top of it was a crude plastic decoration shaped like a man's organ. The camera zoomed in. People laughed. Laura laughed. I closed the app and sat there in silence, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. Not jealousy, embarrassment, disappointment. A sense that something private had just been dragged into a public space without my consent. When she came home, I confronted her. I told her that what she did wasn't funny, that it wasn't respectful, that she was a married woman acting like she had nothing to lose. She cried, said I was overreacting, said everyone else thought it was hilarious. I left the room before I said something I couldn't take back. 2 weeks later, I asked her if she was still upset with me. She smiled strangely and said, "You're just jealous." That word hit me harder than the argument ever did. After that, things changed quickly. She started posting constantly. TikTok dances, flirtatious comments, filters that made her look like a stranger. She filmed everywhere, restaurants, the car, even family outings. It stopped being fun and started feeling obsessive. One afternoon, while I was driving, she started recording a video. I asked her to stop. She didn't. I pulled over, took the phone from her hand, and ended the stream. "Be here," I said, "with your family, not with strangers." She stared at me like I'd crossed a line. A week later, on her actual birthday, I gave her a gold bracelet. She barely looked at it before leaving with her friends again. That night, I suggested therapy. She refused, and then she said the sentence that quietly ended our marriage. "I've been thinking about divorce for 2 years," I warned her, about her friends, about the outside world, about what happens when applause fades and reality shows up uninvited. She didn't listen. She hung up the phone. And 2 days later, she announced the divorce like it was a personal rebrand. She didn't say goodbye when she left. I came home from work and the house felt hollow, like someone had removed the air. Her clothes were gone from the closet. Half the bathroom shelves were empty. The photo frames on the hallway wall were still there, but the meaning had drained out of them. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table staring at his phone. "She left," he said, without looking up. I nodded. I already knew. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He just looked tired in a way no 19-year-old should. Later that night, he told me something that stuck. "I kind of expected it," he said. "She's been gone for a while." That hurt more than anything Laura had done. A few days later, she posted about it. A long caption, carefully worded. Something about choosing herself, about how life was too short to dim your own light for other people. She wrote about small fires glowing in the distance, guiding her toward something new. People applauded in the comments. None of them knew the cost. At first, she claimed she was done with men altogether, said she needed time to heal and rediscover who she really was. That lasted maybe 3 weeks. Then she introduced a new boyfriend. Younger. Fit. Loud smile. She posted pictures like she was trying to prove something to someone who wasn't watching anymore. They went to rooftop bars, trendy restaurants, places she'd never shown interest in when we were together. 2 weeks later, he was gone. No explanation, no closure, just deleted photos and vague captions about energy shifts and learning lessons. Not long after that, someone sent me a photo. Laura sitting across from a much younger man in a restaurant. His arm around her waist, her hand on his thigh. She looked desperate, not happy. Like someone chasing applause instead of connection. I didn't show Daniel. He was dealing with his own disappointment in his own way. Laura, meanwhile, leaned harder into the spotlight. She danced in lingerie at a private party, filmed by someone who didn't care about angles or dignity. She posted thirst traps, joined dating apps openly, swiped on men young enough to be her students. In one video, a guy noticed the camera and frowned. "Seriously?" he said. "You're filming this?" She laughed and posted it anyway. A few months into this new life, something shifted. The posts slowed down. The captions grew longer and darker, less confident, more reflective. She admitted online that her marriage hadn't been terrible, that I'd been a good husband, that maybe she'd made mistakes chasing excitement without thinking about consequences. Then one evening she showed up at my door. I almost didn't open it. She looked older, tired. Her confidence had deflated, replaced by something close to fear. "I want to come home," she said. I told her there was no home anymore. I'd sold the house, moved somewhere quieter, somewhere she didn't know. She asked if she could stay anyway, just temporarily. I told her no. I said I had a dog now. And that was true. But it wasn't the real reason. The real reason was simpler. You don't rebuild a house on burned ground. After that night, she stopped coming by, at least in person. The messages came instead. Long ones, carefully written, like legal arguments mixed with confessions. She talked about fear, about loneliness, about how the world outside our marriage wasn't what her friends had promised, how attention felt good at first, intoxicating even, but then became addictive and finally meaningless. I didn't reply. Not because I was cruel, but because I'd already said everything that mattered. Daniel saw the messages anyway. She sent some to him too. Apologies, explanations, promises to do better. He read them in silence, then put his phone down. "She wants us back when it's convenient," he said, "not when it's hard." That was the moment I realized he'd grown up faster than I ever wanted him to. Laura's new life unraveled quietly, without drama. No big scandal, no public meltdown, just a slow erosion. The men stopped calling. The invitations dried up. Her friends, those same women who had cheered her on, became distant once she stopped being entertaining. They had their own marriages to protect, their own images to maintain. She tried to pivot, started talking about spirituality, about therapy, about toxic cycles. She framed herself as someone who'd been lost, not someone who'd chosen to leave. People are much kinder to the lost than to the responsible. But reality doesn't follow narratives. She struggled financially for the first time in her adult life. Rent, bills, no shared account to fall back on, no quiet safety net she didn't even realize I'd been providing all those years. Once, she called me late at night. I answered out of instinct, not intention. She was crying. "I didn't think it would be like this," she said. "Everyone told me I deserved more." I stayed quiet. "Why didn't you fight harder for me?" she asked. That was the question that finally ended everything inside me. "I did," I said. "For 20 years. You just didn't notice because it wasn't loud." She didn't call again after that. Daniel and I moved forward. We talked more, cooked together, took trips, simple ones, fishing, hiking, no cameras, no audience. Just moments that didn't need to be shared to matter. One afternoon, he asked me if I'd ever marry again. I laughed. "At my age," I said, "I think I've learned my lesson." He smiled. "Good." I transferred most of my assets into a trust for him. Not because I was giving up on life, but because I understood something now. Legacy matters more than image. Stability matters more than excitement. As for Laura, I heard things through mutual acquaintances. Her health declined, stress, anxiety, exhaustion. She worked jobs she'd once looked down on. Nothing wrong with honest work, but it hit her pride hard. She rarely saw Daniel. When she did, the conversations were polite, shallow, careful. The kind you have with someone you no longer trust, not to hurt you. The man she left us for, the one she swore was different, had vanished within days. Blocked her, deleted his accounts, moved on without a second thought. He got what he wanted. And when he was done, he disappeared. Laura was left with silence, and finally with herself. Time has a way of doing what arguments never can. It doesn't shout. It doesn't accuse. It just places people exactly where their choices lead them, and leaves them there long enough to understand. A year passed, then another. My life became quieter, but in a way that felt earned. I sold the apartment in the city and bought a small place closer to the water, far from noise, far from people who lived for appearances. Mornings started with walks instead of notifications. Evenings ended with silence instead of tension. Daniel visited often. Sometimes he stayed for weekends, sometimes longer. He talked about school, about his plans, about the kind of man he wanted to become, and more importantly, the kind he didn't. I never spoke badly about his mother. I didn't have to. Reality was doing that work for me. Laura tried in her own way to rebuild an image. Not a life, an image. She posted less now, but every post was carefully crafted. Quotes about growth, about lessons, about losing yourself to find yourself. But there was something missing. Joy doesn't fake well when the camera is off. One afternoon, she showed up unexpectedly. No dramatic entrance, no tears this time, just tired eyes and a careful knock. She looked older than her years, not because of age, but because disappointment ages people faster than time ever could. "I heard you moved," she said. "I did." She nodded, like she already knew the answer to the question she hadn't asked yet. "I just wanted to see if there was still a place for me," she said quietly. I didn't invite her in. "There was," I replied, "for 20 years. She swallowed. "I made a mistake." I shook my head. "No, you made a decision. A mistake is forgetting keys. This was a choice you defended for years." She looked down. "He disappeared. Just vanished." "I know," I said. "That tends to happen when someone never planned to stay." She waited. Maybe for anger, maybe for forgiveness. I gave her neither. "I hope you find peace," I said, "but it won't be with me." She left without arguing. That's how I knew she finally understood. Some months later, Daniel told me she was talking about moving again. Another city, another fresh start, another version of herself. I wished her well, genuinely, but from a distance. I don't hate her. Hate takes energy, and I stopped spending mine on people who chose excitement over loyalty, attention over family, fantasy over reality. I won't marry again. Not because love is impossible, but because peace is priceless, and I know how fragile it is. Everything I've built now will go to my son. Not just assets, but an example. One simple truth I hope he carries with him: if someone is willing to burn their family for a stranger, they'll be shocked when that stranger doesn't stay to warm them afterward. Some people chase new lives, others protect the one they already have. And when the applause fades, only one of those choices still feels like home.